Hi everyone, this is Arcadius and welcome back to Naval Creed. Today we'll be finishing up the second part of my future predictions for this game. Yesterday we went over possible future tech trees, and today I will tell you what I would expect or could possibly see being future diamond ships, future prism ships, rank point ships, and event ships, as well as some other Chinese packs and maybe even another event idea. So let's switch over to that. One moment. All right, so the first one I have here is the Japanese battleship Ize. Now, this is pretty much just a Fuso with a better gun layout, but later on they switched it so that the rear part of the ship was actually a carrier conversion because they lost so many carriers in Midway. So the ship itself has four double 14-inch guns, and then the rear is pretty much an aircraft carrier. So the kind of game style I would see with her is something similar to like Tone or Oyodo or Mogami. Well, not Mogami, Agano. That's what I'm thinking of. So you would be able to use her like a normal ship. However, she would still be able to have the ability to launch either dive bombers or torpedo bombers, or maybe even both. That'd be an interesting change as well. All right, the next one would either be USS Kidd, Howell, or Johnston. Now, all three of these are your Fletcher class destroyers, and yes, we just received a new one in the game as the USS Halford. However, each one of the ships I just mentioned is pretty significant in history. They both had quite spectacular careers. So maybe just a normal premium Uss Fletcher would be not too bad itself. That's something that Halford can't really be since she's kind of a specialized ship. Next up, we have another American destroyer. This one would be USS Somers. Also, Ize would be a tier 6. Johnson, Howell, or Kidd would be a tier 9. Somers would be a tier 10. She has 4 double 5-inch guns. That's right, she has 8 5-inch guns. And then 3 quintuple. Actually, no, I think they're quadruple. Yeah, they're 3 quadruple torpedo tubes. So 12 torpedoes to a side and 8 guns to a side as well. So very, very powerful armament. This would be balanced by having pretty bad AA. So something maybe like a Tashkent. That's what comes to mind. She would be a very, very powerful ship, but she would be pretty easy to balance, I feel, as well. Next up, we have USS Indianapolis. Almost everyone who knows a little bit about World War II knows this ship. She's pretty infamous. She is also a cruiser that we don't really have in the game. We have the USS Pensacola, which is below her, and then we go straight to New Orleans, which is above her. We don't really have the Northampton or Portland class cruisers in the game. So I would see that this one being a good addition. This one would be a tier 7 since Wichita and New Orleans are about 7.5 to 7.6 ish. Having her half a matchmaking rank below would be pretty logical, I would say. Next, we have the USS Texas. Now, this is a New York class battleship. However, during the war, she was giving so much anti-aircraft guns. It was not even funny. So she would have amazing AA defense, but she would still keep the basic stats of a New York class battleship with the 10 14-inch guns, pretty slow speed, but her AA would be very considerable. And honestly, that would be really fun. I would enjoy having her and being able to knock down as many airplanes as possible. Next up is another American battleship, Arizona. Everyone has heard of Arizona. There's not real much explanation as to why I think this would be a good addition. Yes, it may cause some controversy, but I feel like she would be a good addition to the game. Texas would be a tier 5, Arizona would be a tier 6. So she would be with New Mexico with the same amount of armament, which would be 12 14-inch guns. So I think she would be a pretty good ship as well. And then we have USS Wasp. So she was kind of like a lighter version of Yorktown and Enterprise. So I have her set as a tier 6 to match with Ranger. So she would have possibly better air groups than Ranger. But like I said, she will not be as strong physically as Enterprise is. But Ranger's pretty easy to be destroyed either, or also. So maybe it would just be a free XP ship, or one you would be able to grind free XP with, but she'd still be interesting addition. Alright, next is another carrier, the French carrier Bern. Now, there was news way back when that there might possibly be a French carrier line. Now, honestly, I don't see this being plausible. So I have the two French carriers that were designed and or actually built as premium or diamond or prism ships, whatever you want to call it. First one being Bern at tier 6. Though that may actually be a little too high for her. She might be better off as a tier 5. But we'll see. So yeah, going up, I would say against Independences and Furiouses and Royhos would be better. So that would be a change. Next up is Joffrey, another French carrier designed later in the war. I have her as an either a tier 7 or a tier 8. I could see her being placed in either, though I feel like tier 7 would be better. And then we have German ships. So we have Emden, which is pretty much just a Dresden class. However, she does have quite the history, and if you don't know about it, you should definitely look into it because it's a very interesting story. So she would pretty much just be another Dresden. However, I hope they keep the nice camo that the ship actually had. A white ship with yellow funnels would definitely stand out, and it looks amazing. But yeah, just having it is a low tier ship, but it could still be a gem ship. It'd be a pretty cheap one, but it'd be nice to have a little piece of history as well. Next, we have the German battlecruiser Seydlitz. Not only is this personally one of my favorite ships ever, can't really explain why, she just is, but she would also be a good addition to the German battleship tree. We don't really have any specified battle cruisers. Whether or not that's because they're thinking about adding an entire line or not is up for debate, but if they're not, then at least having Seydlitz would be pretty good. Now, I have a limited idea of what a battlecruiser line could look like for the German tech tree, but we're not going to go into that right now. For right now, we're going to assume that they are not going to have one, and that I would love to see this ship in the game because I would play her nonstop. I do have her as a tier 4, so she would be going matched up with Kaisers, which has a pretty similar gun layout as well. Next, we have the Italian carrier Aquila. They didn't really have many carriers at all, but this one was almost completed before the war was ended. So I could definitely see her being as a tier 7 or even 8, depending on your air group. I like tier 7 for carriers the most because it's right around the time where you have some really powerful carriers. You have Lexingtons. No, you don't have Lexingtons. It's 7 is yeah, it's Rangers. Okay. You have Rangers, you have Graf Zeppelins, you have Aramanche. You have all these interesting carrier designs at this time, and not one is really regarded as the best. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. All right, now we have British ships. I would like to see a tribal class destroyer. Very similar to Legion, honestly. So possibly not. If we're comparing it against Legion, they're almost identical. It actually has less armament. Legion has better torpedoes, but Tribal would have better gun angles. So it's possible that she could be placed in the game. I do have her listed as a tier 8. So she would still be matched with Legion. So it's to be seen if she would be good or not. Next, I have the Dido, however you want to say it, class light cruiser. I'm kind of hesitant about this one, honestly, because I feel like this game does not need a massive amount of HE spammers. But this ship is so unique that I feel like she could have some pretty interesting gameplay. I do have her listed as either a tier 7 or a tier 8 cruiser, depending on how powerful she is made. It looks like she has some torpedoes, she has quite a few dual purpose guns. Her armor will be pretty light as well, since she was pretty much just a British Atlanta class cruiser. But it might be interesting to see what she could do. Next, we have pretty much the majority of all British heavy cruisers during the war, the County class. They have 4 double 8-inch guns. Honestly, that's pretty good. I do have her listed as a tier 7, so she would be going up against, to an extent, Miyoko's and New Orleans, so I feel like she would fit in pretty good at that tier. And then we have the other half of the British heavy cruiser line, the Exeter and the York, which were kind of smaller versions of the County class with only 3 double 8-inch guns. But this ship itself also has a pretty good history, specifically in the River Plate. And then later in the Battle of the Java Sea, I believe it was. So this one, historically, I could see her being a quite good addition to the game as well. Next, we have Agincourt. So this ship has 14 12-inch guns. I'm actually pretty sure they're 12-inch. I'm not quite sure on the caliber. Either way, she has 14 guns to a side. That is very, very powerful. I do have her listed as either a tier 5 or a tier 6. So with that being said, I think they are 12-inch guns. And it's really because it's a mix between the number of guns she has and the caliber they are. Since they are kind of lower caliber compared to everything else at tier 6, that equals out because she has such a heavy broadside. But it's really up for debate. I could see her being in either tier. And then we have Royal Oak. Royal Oak has a pretty significant... She's pretty infamous as well for being torpedoed and destroyed. But she also is a Revenge class battleship, which is similar to Queen Elizabeth, but a little bit different. So she has similar armament, and I could see her being matched with Queen Elizabeth at tier 6 as well. Then we have the Soviet cruiser Mermansk. So this one is actually an Omaha cruiser that was lended over to the Soviets during the war. Right now in the game we have Aurora at tier 3 matchmaking, and then Krasny Kavkaz at matchmaking tier 5. We don't have a tier 4, so I feel like this one would be able to fill that gap quite nicely. And also, I never actually had the ship in World of Warships, but I really wanted her. So if she ever came out in this game, I would be one of the first to actually get her, because I would think she'd be a quite fun ship. Alright, now that was all the Diamond and Prism ships that I have currently that I could see being added to the game. Now, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the video, but none of this information in this video is either confirmed or denied by Naval Creed. I don't have any connections. It's just my predictions / what I would like to see in the game, and there's no information to support that yet. Next, I'm going to go over for future rank point ships. Now, I really don't actually like the idea of rank point ships. For people like me who have a tough time accessing the China server effectively, the only way I can actually get rank points is when they come out on sale, and you can only get 5 at a time. So to get ships that are 30 to 36 rank points, it takes you a long time. I only have one, and that was Cheyenne. And that took me the entire time since rank points started coming out to actually save up for it. So even though I may not like them, I can understand why they would be in the game. So I still have a few additions to that. Surprisingly, they're actually all American, but we'll go get by that. So first we have USS Venom. So this is a really, really powerful ship in World of Warships. She has 4 5-inch guns and then 4 quadruple torpedo tube launchers, 2 on each side. So you have 8 torpedoes to a side, so 16 torpedoes total you can put out. That is a lot of torpedoes. Similar to Somers, she would have relatively bad AA, but her offensive power would be almost, if not, unmatched at tier. I have her at tier 9. And then we have USS California at possibly tier 8. So she does only have 12 14-inch guns, so similar to Arizona and New Mexico, but she's also quite slow. So the main reason why I have her at tier 8 is because I think she could be able to have a unmatched AA potential. So she would be going up against North Carolinas, which do have pretty powerful AA themselves. So to have even more AA would definitely mean that she would have her place in that tier as well. She'd be a very slow, very tanky kind of battleship. Her guns would not be the biggest by any means. They might even actually be the smallest. I didn't really check that. But she would have a really, really, really powerful anti-aircraft suite that would make her almost untouchable to carriers. So that'd be pretty cool to see as well. And then last rank point ship would be Saipan as a tier 8 as well. Very similar to Independence class carrier. However, she would be about the same size, but she would have top tier aircraft. So she would have like tier 9 and tier 10 aircraft, but the ship itself would be at a tier 8. So something similar to like Aramanche, which Aramanche is pretty okay in the game, I would say. She's not necessarily overpowered, but she does have a unique playstyle, so something similar to that would be quite interesting. Now, event ships. Now, I was trying to think of all the earlier event ships that we've had to see if there's a common trend. Most recently, we've had Kronstadts, so high-tier battle cruisers. We've had Rhinelands, so high-tier battleships. We've also had Mikasa. We've also had Aurora now. Halford, Danton. So a lot of lower pre-dreadnoughts and a couple other lower cruisers. So my first one is Albany, which is a very early American light cruiser. I have her as a matchmaking tier 2, so this is kind of going along the same lines of Aurora here. She's not as powerful as Aurora by any means. I think she only has, six-inch guns with a 4 on the broadside. But it'd still be interesting to see her. This is also another ship in World of Warships that I was never able to get, but it was pretty cool when you did go against a player that had one. So kind of collector's idea there as well. And then we have the Russian cruiser Variag. So also similar to Aurora, I also have her as a tier 2, so a tier lower than Aurora. There's not much to say about these lower tier cruisers. They're literally almost all the same, just a bunch of low caliber guns on the front and the sides of the ship and nothing else. But they're still pretty fun to play. And then this one is kind of going off of the Kronstadt idea. So I have the Japanese B-65 class battle cruisers. So this was the ship that the Alaska class cruisers were designed to go against. These were never actually built, but the design is pretty interesting. So to have this in the game as well would be nice, considering we now have high-tier German cruisers. They're kind of battle cruiser-y with the O-class and the Brandenburg. And then we also have Kronstadt, we have Alaska and Guam. So seeing another Japanese high-tier cruiser would be pretty nice as well. I have her as a tier 9. And then going off of like the Mikasa Danton kind of trend for event ships, I would like to see the USS South Carolina, the first battleship. It'll be slow, it'll be lumbering, it only has 8 12-inch guns, which is actually pretty powerful, but I still have her as a tier 2. So she will be going up against like the Mikasas, Dantons, and Kawachis. I feel like that's a pretty good place for her to be. Alright, moving on. So occasionally there is a Chinese pack or a Pan Asian pack, I guess you could say. So that's how Kamikaze, or what's in the game? It's Shenyang. Then there's also Yatsen, there's Huang He, and there's also Liaoning as packs. So another pack idea is the Chinese light cruiser Ninghai. For some reason, I just really like the look at this ship. I can't explain it, but she's always just stood out to me as a really pretty cruiser. She has I would say a similar layout to or gameplay to Yubari. So she would have the three double 6-inch gun turrets. She also has torpedoes, and she does have some AA guns. She's not the fastest nor the most powerful, but I could see her as being a pretty interesting pack ship. I do have her listed as a tier 3 as well. And then lastly, we have a additional hull for Mogami. So Magami, we already have an 8-inch and a 6-inch gun switch out you could use, but she was also made into a half hybrid carrier later in the game or in the war by removing the two aftermost turrets. So seeing something like that would be interesting as well. I don't know if they haven't done this because they already have Tone, which is almost, if not exactly the same, just minus one double 8-inch gun turret. But having that flexibility to have either all of your guns or to have half a flight deck, it would be kind of interesting as well. And that's not something you can find in World of Warships, at least currently. And then, so those are the Diamond, Prism, Rank Point, and Event ships that I could see for the current countries in the game. However, there are also a lot of other countries that are not in the game right now that I have ships I would like to see for this. That's like Sweden and Poland, Austria-Hungary, Australia. There's also even some Canadian ships that I could see. Possibly like a pan-European tech tree as well, or at least a small grouping of European countries that have really small navies. I would love to see some other ships as well, some variety. And then lastly, the event idea I have. So this is going back to yesterday's video of the Tillman battleships. So we already have an H-45 battleship event mission. That's pretty cool and all, but we could also have a Tillman battleship event mission. So you would have to go against a battleship that would have 4 sextuple turrets. So they would have 6 guns each of 16-inch guns. Yeah, it would be like 24 6-inch guns. So literally, like, what would that be? Like 2 Montanas firing at you at the same time. Yes, that is very powerful, but on the downside, she would have really terrible maneuvering, practically no AA. Secondaries would not be that important at all, and she may have I could see her having a armor scheme similar to like a Colorado, where it can be pretty powerful, but if you have large enough guns, you can be citadel pretty easily. So this ship would be susceptible to air attack, just concentrated volleys, and torpedo attacks as well. But it would definitely be a case of endurance, whether or not your guns and armaments could sink her before her 24 16-inch guns could. So I could see that as a good idea for an event mission. And so that will wrap up today's video. Like I said, there is additional information that I've thought about that I have not included yet. So that's something like the German battlecruiser line, or future. There are some other gem and prism ships, or other ships I should say, that I'd like to see in the game. But nothing as so special as those. So those are the main ones that I would like to see. I do notice that few of you have commented on yesterday's video about the tech tree lines, so thank you for that. Feel free to put any of your requests are for, or I should say predictions for gem and prism ships as well, if you have any. With that, I will wrap up today's video. If you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe. And tomorrow we will be going back to the game, and we will be beginning our rundown of battleships. So we will be starting with the Japanese battleship Kawachi tomorrow. So thank you again for watching, and take care.